Sandy Hook is a synthetic, completely fake, with actors, in my view, manufactured. I couldn't believe it at first. There's a cover-up. There's actors. They're manipulating. They've been caught lying, and they were pre-planning before it and rolled out with it. The whole thing is a giant hoax. And the problem is, how do you deal with a total hoax? I mean, how do you even convince the public something's a total hoax?
That's Alex Jones, he the conspiracy theorist behind Infowars. Now, he had said that Sandy Hook was a hoax by people who want to get rid of the Second Amendment. Now, 3 parents who lost their kids, they're suing Jones for defamation. Infowars also said this man, Neil Hesland, made up a story about the handling of his son Jesse's body after the 6-year-old was gunned down that fateful day. What was said is too disgusting for us to even play for you. Hesland, one of the parents who is now suing. Lawyers for Jones, they're saying the suits are frivolous, but Jones, he has a history of conspiracy theories and outrageous statements. He pushed the Pizzagate story. You may remember that. He said that Hillary Clinton's campaign robbed a human trafficking ring out of a Washington pizzeria. Jones, also the truther who says 9/11 was an inside job. And after the Parkland shooting, Jones said survivor and student leader David Hogg was a crisis actor. And there's more that we don't frankly have time to even get into. During Jones's divorce case, it was reported Jones doesn't buy into what even he's saying. Here's how the magazine described it. A lawyer for Jones recently said the conspiracy theorist is merely playing a character when he speaks via his Infowars channels. Quote, he's playing a character. According to attorney Randall White, who said during a recent pretrial hearing he is a performance artist. Now, I sat down yesterday with Neil Hesland and his attorney, Mark Bankston. Neil, we've talked many times over the last 5 years after the unspeakable tragedy, but I never thought that in part of that tragic aftermath, you and other parents would have to deal with the likes of what I just heard from Alex Jones. What's it been like to be called a crisis actor who faked your own child's death?
It's hurtful. You know, as I said in the past, the worst thing a parent can ever have to deal with is the loss of a child. And to have remarks, statements, and lies and comments such as that thrown at you and continuously brought up in false media, it's totally unacceptable. And it goes far beyond that also. It puts people at a risk and a danger with followers that reach, you know, with the threats they pass along and death threats. It goes on and on and on. I had a woman approach me and gave me a hug and said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And seconds later, she's looking me in the eye and says, "You think Sandy Hook really happened?" And this is what I deal with on a daily basis, and they all feed off of Alex Jones and hoaxsters and conspiracy theories.
Well, Neil, more than generally talking with that ridiculousness, it was a hoax, a person on the staff at Infowars directly said that you lied about holding your own son after he was killed. And in fact, Alex Jones followed that up by saying, when are you and the media going to finally admit it never happened? He said you lied about holding your own child after he was murdered?
First of all, that was Owen Schroyer. And yes, that's correct. That was a remark in the statement that was made. You know, it was clearly unjust. It was an outright lie on their behalf, and I don't owe them any explanation of the details. I buried my son. We had a funeral. You know, I witnessed his body after he was killed. In fact, we had an open casket for Jesse.
Mark, it's been argued that the defamation case is without merit. I'm going to read a quote here from Jones where he said, "It's every American's right to question any big event, especially when it's seized on to take the basic liberties of Americans, he say, referring to the Second Amendment. Where does the First Amendment rights to free speech start and stop when it comes to Alex Jones?
That's a great question. You know, in this country, we like to foster an open and healthy debate in our country. And if media people or even private people want to speculate and make conspiracy theories or whatever their thoughts may be about public people, about people who are making policy for this country, that's a healthy thing to do, and we've always decided that that kind of speech is welcome. Where it crosses the line is where you take a private person like Mr. Hesland or my other clients, the Posners, and you say maliciously false things about them. When you subject them to torment for over 5 years and never let up, the First Amendment does not protect that. This case is not about the First Amendment. But Alex Jones has made it about the Seventh Amendment, which is Mr. Hesland's right to seek redress from a jury and put a stop to this ugly, ugly behavior.
Mark, does it matter what Jones calls himself or is? He says, you know, that he's an entertainer at the end of the day, that he's an actor. Meanwhile, I can tell you from people who watch it, and clearly, as Neil said, people believe what he's saying. Does it matter if he calls himself a newsman or an entertainer in the eyes of the law?
Absolutely not. A lie is a lie. And on top of that, this is a man who has promoted his network as what he calls the front line of truth journalism. His Washington, D.C. correspondent was given White House press passes. He has the ear of the president. We cannot afford to pretend that Alex Jones is a joke or somehow on the sides or the fringes of American politics. He is a major mainstream media figure followed by millions who believe that he is telling them the truth. And this is why he definitely needs to be held to account.
And does pattern matter, Mark, in that I mentioned a few examples, there's countless more, 9/11, inside job, that I can go on and on here. He said this many times, Pizzagate, etc. Would it matter if this was the first time and not the 50th time, or is it each different statement its own?
Now, look, it might not matter. I mean, a lie is a lie, and if you say a lie and it hurts people, you need to be held accountable. But what we're seeing here is this pattern creates evidence of his malicious intent. When you see all of the different people he has created these lie conspiracy theories about, you may remember the pastor in Sutherland Springs after the shooting was confronted by Infowars fans who yelled violent threats at him, even after his daughter was killed in the shooting. Or you may ever consider our firm represents a young man in Boston who was falsely tarred and feathered as the Parkland shooter when he's never even been to Florida. This outfit has shown time and time again not only do they have no journalistic integrity, but their defamation is intentional, and it's used to rile up their audience, and they know that that will have that effect. So in this case, yes, his prior statements are absolutely evidence of the malicious intent he has directed towards these families.
And Neil, finally for me, he's been doing this, Jones and crew, for 5 years. So why now? Was there a final straw that you decided to sue?
Well, you hope that he'll just stop with it, or the threats will go away, and you tolerate it to a certain point. And I'm just done with it. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the harassment, the fuel that Alex Jones is putting in the fire to feed these conspiracy theories and the hoaxsters and on and on and on. And I refuse to let him continue to pass these lies on about me and my integrity and also about my son. It's a disrespect to Jesse. Jesse died a hero. His words and his actions saved the lives of 9 of his classmates that day, and I refuse to let Alex Jones get away with it.
You know, Neil, I always appreciate, since then, you've really put a face, not just on your son, but on this tragedy and the changes we have to figure as a nation in its aftermath, and now again we're faced with many of those same questions after Parkland. But Neil, I wish you and Mark and your other clients all the luck here. Hopefully justice at least will be served with Mr. Jones. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Siva Israel, he left Congress saying that he was sick of all the money in politics. Now that he's a private citizen, he's free to really speak his mind. Our conversation about the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, and why he's so happy now that he's out of Congress. That's straight ahead.